This is Running Books Reviews. This is the place where we review all the books you wish you could read if it wasn't for the fact you were out running all the time. Are you looking for a book to get inspired about your running? Or just looking to get a little bit more informed for your training or motivated for your running activities? Well, you've come to the right place. We'll give you a fairly in-depth coverage of the book. Apart from telling you a lot of what's inside the book, we'll tell you what we think is perhaps good and perhaps not so good within the book and give you our recommendations. But at the end of the day, you can decide for yourself. And perhaps you'll figure it's worthwhile going out and buying the book and reading the whole thing for yourself. My name's Alan Miller, and today I'm going to be joined with my good running buddy Liz Macrusa, and we're going to talk to you extensively about the book The Hanson Marathon Method by Luke Humphrey. I think there's quite a lot of interesting discussion to be had on this book, so let's get down to it. Okay, well, welcome. Today's book review is Hanson's Marathon Method, second edition by Luke Humphrey. I have a bit of an expert on Hanson's Marathon Method and somebody who's devoured the book pretty thoroughly and has actually tried to use the training and has got some experience with it. So I'm going to, rather than talk through the book myself, although I've got a bit of background, I'm going to use the superior skills of Liz Macrusa and get her to tell me a bit about the book. First of all, we'll start off. We'll talk a little bit about the author, and then we'll go through the stages of the book, and then at the end, like normal, we'll give our views and sort of Q&A and recommendations at the end. Obviously, we'll be mostly interested in Liz's views because she's the expert, but as usual, I'll have some views. So welcome, Liz.
Hi. I'm so excited to talk about this book because, as you know, I've been following it for about a year now, and I learned a lot from this book. So.
Okay, well, maybe we could start off with a bit about, just tell us what the idea of this book is and who's this guy, Luke Humphrey?
So basically, the book is the marathon method that's followed by the Brooks Hanson Distance Project in the U.S. So these are runners that are pretty high caliber. One of them being Desiree Linden, who won the Boston Marathon.
Boston Marathon was in 2018. I remember because that's when we nearly died because of the weather. I was running in that race. I wasn't quite as far up the field as Des Linden, but I remember that's when she won because we were all very wet.
Yes, so that was the one she won, and she was running for many years with the Hanson's team until I think maybe after that marathon. I think she switched teams now, but I could be wrong about that. And it's their sort of, I guess, their method for training for a marathon, which, I mean, you know, marathon training varies a little bit between, you know, depending on what's people believe in or people believe is the most important part. But
yeah, and there are some very particular things about this marathon training method which you're going to tell us about in terms of I hope in terms of overall strategy. But perhaps before that, we could just talk about Luke Humphrey. You know anything about Luke?
I think, yeah, I from what I remember, he's an exercise physiologist, and he also trained with this group, so he knows the method well, and he's trained at a high level because in the book there's actually an appendix, and it's his because they give sort of a few plans. They have like a just finished plan, and then they have an advanced plan. And he gives, it's not really a plan, it's more like his training log while he was training for a marathon. And so his training log is like elite So you see like there's much more mileage, and everything's longer basically, and he does a lot of doubles in it. So that's pretty much what I know about Luke, is that
Okay, so he's an elite marathon experienced person. He trained with the Hanson brothers in terms of in some of their original programs, and sort of learned the program through them originally, and is now, I think I saw all his stuff on YouTube. So he's a pretty well-known, experienced trainer in his own right these days.
Yep, yeah, that's kind of the idea I get. And yeah, his videos pretty much I'm going to say defend the plan, because there are a couple things that when people hear about this, they're sort of like not convinced. But he sort of, in those videos, he actually tackles some of them. So if you don't buy the book, or even if you do buy the book, the videos are actually kind of nice too.
Should probably get into the overall approach. The book seems to be in three parts. First part is the approach. Second part is the program itself, and the third part is a sort of strategy and how to use all the things he talks about. So chapters 1 and 2 are about the overall approach, which maybe you could tell all the listeners about. What's the idea of this? How is it like a normal program? How is it unlike a normal program? If there's controversy, and I think there is a little bit, what that is, that stuff.
Yeah, so it is like any other training program, is that, you have your long run once a week, and you have usually some type of marathon pace workout, like some kind of tempo, and then some kind of shorter, faster workout. So, the number of workouts per week are pretty much the same. The biggest place where it varies, well, I'm going to say the biggest place, because this is the one that's sort of hard to convince people on, but is the long run. The long run is not quite as long as most people would want to do before a marathon. So they don't do, the longest long run is 16 miles, which is about 26 kilometers. And most people like to do at least a 32K long run before a marathon, or even some people will go higher than that, because, it gives you confidence and all that kind of stuff. But what they do in this plan, instead of having a really long run, is that they'll have you run 6 days a week. And part of that, they explain in the first couple chapters, is that it's the cumulative fatigue that then, the idea is that when you're doing your long run, it's shorter, but it feels like the last 26 kilometers of your marathon, rather than being fresh and feeling like the first 26 kilometers of your marathon. So that's pretty much.
So the idea is not to fatigue you with an overall long run that you do every week. 20 miles is the sort of holy grail number that we usually hear in marathon training programs, but to fatigue you with bulk miles in terms of the overall program.
Yeah,
6 days a week sounds a little more than most programs, I think.
Yeah, because some people will, will want to run maybe 4 or 5 days a week. But what they say is that they try and keep the long run between 25 and 30% of your weekly mileage. And they do that because they say that when you do a really long runs, like some people will have a weekly mileage of maybe 50 or 60 kilometers. And then if they go and they run 30 kilometers for their long run, it's pretty much 50% of their weekly mileage is right there in the long run. And what they say is that then you're recovering for the rest of the week from your long run and not hitting paces or other targets that you should be hitting. And that's why they structure it a little bit differently.
So the marathon amateurs like me, before I was retired, would try to do all my marathon training at the weekend, basically. then go to work during the week, and then do it all again the next weekend. And the idea is to get away from that, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you're not the only one that was doing that. A lot of people do that because, they have other things like families and, things happen and you have, social outings for work and things like that. I remember you had a lot of those.
Yeah. So for this program, no families, no
No
social
families.
life. every day is training day.
Yes, exactly.
And you're going to build up your fatigue gradually rather than just smashing yourself at the weekend.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the idea, at least.
Okay. So a change in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And the book explains that as being sensible because you need to maintain your recovery and maintain a little bit the level of fatigue that you've got.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. They
Okay.
pretty much, they don't want you to be completely smashed. But you do, like, they're kind of counting on you if you're running the 6 days a week that you're going to accumulate fatigue throughout the plan, not like all at once. And then that's going to make your workouts feel a bit more difficult. So
am I gonna hate this program because it's going to
no, so
it's going to
actually,
hurt, or am I going to love it because it's going to be nice to me?
so what they say is that you're going to love it because it's going to be very nice to you, because instead of having all the mileage piled up on the weekends, like you said, you're going to have it spread out. So it's kind of going to be easier on your body. And they say that you're going to love it once you run the marathon and you feel really prepared, and that the marathon doesn't completely destroy you. And so, because that's the other thing that they mentioned, is that people will do the traditional plans, and maybe they don't have as many days to devote to marathon training, and then the marathon will just be a really long, difficult event, and some people will never want to do another one again. And
Okay.
so they think
Yeah,
that,
and what I see as well is, because I agree with that. I mean, I've partaken in some of this training as well, and we can share views on that towards the end. But I think I would agree with that because it seems to sort of just help you to gradually build up a capability.
mm-hmm.
And that can have fun spots in training. So that's basically the overall. In terms of numbers of miles, do you do more, or do you do less? You seem to do.
So
It seems that you do a lot more of easier ones, and I guess that's part of the fun and the enjoyment.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like that's part of the fun, because the easy runs are the fun ones where you can talk with your running friends and just go out and enjoy it. But yeah, there are a lot more easy runs, and the purpose is also to make sure that you're not completely, you don't take complete recovery days, so that you get to the long run, which is not so long, but it feels just as hard, hopefully. Well, maybe not as hard as doing a 32K long run.
I like the way in the first couple of chapters that Humphreys explains a little bit in pretty easy to understand terms, some of the things that are going on with your body and why the runs are designed the way they are, because of the running factors, in terms of physiology and VO2 max and all those nice things that you hear about but don't
Mm-hmm.
really understand. He seems to explain that quite well, and why the program works in terms of those factors.
Yeah, I did like that section. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd for those kinds of training details. I like learning about that, and also the way that it's structured. Just sort of once he explains it, makes sense, because the first half of the plan is 18 weeks. It's actually 17 because the first week has you like jog easy for 3 days. So I don't really count the first one.
Okay, I can do that.
If you want to count that first week, it's 18 weeks. But the first sort of half of the plan has you working on what he calls speed, which is like 5K, 10K pace intervals on the Mondays. Actually, no, in the book, it's on the Tuesdays, but we switched it to the Mondays. So let's stick to the book. So it has you doing that on the Tuesdays. And then for the second half of the 18 weeks, it'll switch over to what he calls strength workouts. So the speed workouts are shorter. It's usually 5K worth of intervals. And he does kind of like a pyramid with it. So it starts off with 12 times 400, and then you'll do the week after on the Tuesday, then you'll do 8 times 600, and then it'll be 6 times 800, 5 times 1 kilometer. Anyway, then you go back down. So like 6 times 800. So he kind of does a pyramid. And then once you're back down at the bottom of the pyramid, then the second half of the training program is is strength, which is marathon pace minus 10 seconds per mile is the pace you're supposed to be running, but it's 10K worth of intervals, and the intervals are much longer. So you start with intervals 6 times 1 mile. So I kind of like that the way that it's structured, that you end up sort of working on one thing and then you transition and you work on another thing. And he explains it in the book. The reason that it's in that order is because the strength is more specific to the marathon, so those long intervals. But he doesn't underestimate the importance of having those speed workouts, so that's kind of fun. And then he also explains for the Thursday runs. So these runs are the marathon pace runs, which he calls tempo, but it's actually marathon pace.
Yeah, I worked out that in the book, when he talks about tempo, he's really talking about running at whatever your target marathon pace is.
Yeah.
So one of the things you have to do is decide how quick you're going to run your marathon. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you have to design your program around your target marathon race pace.
Yeah, and he actually even suggests because at the beginning you're doing like 5K, 10K pace. He suggests going to run, if you haven't run a 5K or 10K in a long time, going to do a race to see what your paces are. That's what he suggests, but he also gives a lot of tables, so you can kind of cross-reference it. If you have a marathon target, then he'll give you all the breakdown of the other paces for you, and that by using your marathon target. But he does say that it could be a good idea to run a race and see what your actual 5K, 10K pace should be. So the Thursday workouts, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but those are basically throughout you're running your marathon pace. Those are the Thursday tempo runs. And he suggests that should also be the run where you practice your fueling. So he says, because it's a lot harder to eat gel while you're running marathon pace than while you're jogging. And that's one change that I made, because I used to always take gel when I was doing my long run, because I figured I'm doing my long run, I need gel. And I would stop and eat my gel, but that doesn't help me in a marathon, because then I need to eat it while I'm running,
Yeah, you need to take a gel at the speed that you're running your marathon at.
Exactly.
And with your body and the condition that you're running your marathon at. So these pace runs give you a chance to practice all the other things that you would do during marathon day.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't talk about toilet stops, but I would probably need to do that.
No, they don't talk about that. I think they assume that you're not going to have to stop for the bathroom, but he didn't outline a strategy for that.
So the idea is there's a speed run on the Tuesday, which gradually converts to what he calls a strength run. And I guess the speed run is to condition you so that when it comes to the strength run, you're able to sustain that. And do they work on specific things like your VO2 max, or are they looking to target certain?
Yeah, so the 5K, 10K pace,
thing?
the speed workouts are supposed to be for your VO2 max. I can't remember what they said about the strength workouts, but I know that the marathon pace is so that you can get used to running marathon pace, and then the long run, well, it's because your marathon is going to be long, so you do need a long run. But yeah, the marathon pace runs also, they kind of have a pattern to them as well throughout the plan. So they start every time you move up to a new mileage, you stay there for 3 weeks, which I kind of enjoyed because I found that the first time, whenever you move up an increment, so it was a mile at a time, so you spent like 3 weeks at 6 miles. So you'd do 6 miles, 6 miles, 6 miles, and then you'd move up to 7 miles. And what I found was every time you move up, it would feel kind of hard that day. And then the second time around, it would feel kind of hard. And then the third time, it felt like kind of manageable. So I felt like by staying at that the same increment, I got to sort of like see the evolution, which was kind of like,
So you
I like
condition
that.
yourself at a certain level, and
Mm-hmm.
then you step up, and it steps up every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Just coming back to your comment on the strength runs. I think the idea of the strength runs, in terms of what Humphrey describes, is that it's supposed to improve your anaerobic threshold. So try to push the point at which before you start generating an amount of lactate that you can't sustain. So making you stronger on the run. So you get to you get to burn your glucose for longer and longer before you get into where you might hit the wall. So this is the thing that's going to I think this Thursday run building up at marathon speed is the thing that's going to keep you strong towards the end of the marathon. You're going to tail off and bonk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess you're also going to learn what that pace feels like. So that's also an advantage, and it's a confidence booster, and you get to practice your fueling strategy, which is, I think it's underestimated. I never really used to do that, so it's something that I did for this plan only because I read it in the book.
So in between these runs, there's also the easy runs. So you're bulking your miles up with easy runs. Humphrey is a great advocate, I think, of the easy runs. When I work out his easy run pace, it doesn't look extremely easy, but I think there are some easy runs and easy-ish runs, but he seems to be very keen on the value of those. I got the impression that he hates it when people call those garbage miles, for example, because he says, they're extremely useful. I found that to be the funnest part of the program.
Yes, me too. I enjoy easy miles, so I'm so happy they're not junk. But yeah, I know that in his because in the book he sort of explains that the easy runs, they should be easy enough that you can manage the training load. So he does have like paces in the
he
charts.
takes quite a lot of trouble to try to ensure that just because you can, you don't do those runs any faster than you're supposed to.
Exactly.
Because when we come back to the sort of physiological effects, you're looking for a better aerobic threshold, so to burn your fat for longer before you get to using your valuable, precious glycogen stores that you only have a limited supply of.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of limited supply, at the end there's also a spot where he talks about fueling and how much fuel you should take in during, which was also some fun math to do, and I did it, and I tried to like take as many gels as I would I'd need to bring with me to kind of attain, for me, the lower end of the number, because I just like in the past I've had, I've run marathons where I've taken 2 gels and I thought that was good, and I realized that it really wasn't good. After reading, doing the calculation for myself with my body weight and whatever, and I was and finding out that actually I need like 5 or 6 gels. So
in fact, your fueling strategy is a key part of getting through the marathon in an effective manner, putting the calories back in as you're pouring them out.
Yeah, because what you want to do is delay when you're going to run out of glycogen completely. So it's sort of like by replenishing a little bit of it, because you won't replenish all of it. So that, with your pacing strategy being the appropriate one, and also doing all the training. So hopefully what you do is delay the bonk so that you don't have one at all, or that you have one when you're almost at the finish line.
So when you did the calculations, you found out that generally you weren't probably taking enough, and not taking them early enough.
Yeah, that was the other thing. He explained that it's better to take them early because your body will. Well, I had kind of heard that before. I mean, I've read it somewhere else. I think it was in a magazine, but he did say that early is better because later on that's where you might get the gastric distress, and if you're a little bit dehydrated later on, also it doesn't help, and because your body's using all the energy to send to your legs, then your digestion kind of slowly slows down over the marathon. So that's why taking your gel early is better, and probably key for me, because I remember I used to always be, or I always am, kind of nauseous at the end. So I can't really imagine taking a gel much after 30K.
So if you have to take that amount of gels, I guess my reaction would be, I run loads of marathons. I've never taken 6 gels. I think probably 3 gels is as most of I've been able to manage, which means I'm underdone.
Maybe.
And I guess the way to learn to take more is to do what Humphreys tells you during your tempo training, which is to practice gels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what he says.
You train yourself rather than say, "Oh, I can't do it. I won't take the gels." You need those calories. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to practice in order to be able to take them, rather than say, "Oh, well, I can't."
Yeah,
you have to learn to do it.
That's why that run is the best one, also because it's at pace. So you'll sort of be, not only do you have to eat it while you're trying to run marathon pace and probably breathing really hard, but you also have to digest it while you're running marathon pace. Yeah.
We haven't talked about long runs yet. So what does Humphrey tell us about long runs?
So
Not
this
so
is
long.
Yes, not so long. That's the most controversial part, I think, and it's the hardest sell for anybody that I tell about this book, because I've told a lot of my teammates about it, and when I was following it last time. There's also the fact that they don't have you do a long run every single weekend, so it's really like 1 week on, 1 week off, and the week off is you still run 10 miles on this. I think in the plan it's on the Sunday.
Yeah, which is about 16K.
Yeah, which is about 16K, and then that's as high as that run goes. So you'll always be alternating with the 16K, and then your long runs will get progressively longer as you go along, but you're only doing it every second week. So that's the other thing, is that a lot of our teammates end up doing long runs every weekend, and our plans mostly have a long run every weekend. And what most people do is they end up just slowly increasing the long runs every single weekend, and you end up going pretty high in the long runs, which in this book they say that is that's not a good strategy because of the fatigue that you end up accumulating. There's also a really fascinating little section of like, it's just kind of like a little box and a little aside that mentions that there could be some harmful consequences to doing really long runs, because they hold on, I can read it. I think it'll do it more justice. So in 1985, researchers studied 40 trained males who had just completed a marathon. All had muscular damage in their legs, which was not surprising. What was surprising, however, was the damage to mitochondria and capillaries. After a week, glycogen levels were back to normal, but the damage remained. After 8 weeks, there was still evidence of damage. If you're doing several 20-mile runs in preparation, then you're likely doing similar damage to your legs. Mitochondria and capillaries are crucial for performance. So I found that pretty much, if you weren't convinced, like, I feel like this section, the little aside, at least makes you want to try it, because you're like, oh, if I'm just, here I am doing all my easy runs and I'm building up all my capillaries and building new mitochondria, and then I'm going to like destroy them on the weekend because I insist on doing a 35K long run. So I like that.
So stop those super long back-to-back runs and be candid to your mitochondria. That's
exactly. Yeah.
I guess if you're an ultra trail runner or something like that, it doesn't matter so much. But if you're looking to race a marathon, then you're going to lose that little speed edge that you need. You're not going to be able to push that limit. If you're doing trails and you're going for, 60 or 70K through the mountains, doing UTMB races or something like that, then your training is not going to be geared in that way. But here we're talking about marathons and we're talking about marathon racing. This is what this training is about.
Yeah, and I think what's also, it's that in this is sort of like you also want to perform. So it's not just running a marathon to run marathons. Some people will run a marathon every weekend. I mean, you read about them all the time. Marathon every weekend for 52 weeks to run in every state and those kinds of things. And that's, I think, not really the type of person that this book is for.
We're kind of talking about a program to PR.
Yeah. So another thing I just thought I would mention, like, about the fueling. It's hard to tell what happened in my last race, but I wonder if the fueling being better than it had been in the past, that's why I kind of recovered from the marathon better than I had in the past as well, because I'm typically trashed. Like, I'm usually trashed for 2 weeks, and then I'm also like unable to do anything fast for 2 months at least. It's always been such a long road back, and it was much better this time around. And I wonder if part of the fueling and not bonking and not digging that hole, maybe that sort of helped.
It could be. It could be those expensive Nike shoes that you're wearing, but we won't talk about that for this podcast. What I found, because I tried to do a bit of Hanson method with you while we were getting ready for that marathon. What I found was the long runs at the weekend it was very difficult under the Hanson marathon method. If you've never done it before, it's very difficult to turn the weekend long runs down.
Yes.
I just found that almost impossible. It was like, well, I feel okay.
Yeah.
I'm finished my long run. What am I going to do with the rest of my Saturday? I need to keep going. If I do some extra Ks, that must be better. And so I found, which is like, you've just ruined your training program.
I remember you doing that.
And then I was finding the Wednesday tempos as they were building up to be extremely tough. they were the toughest runs of the week as they got
Yeah.
bigger and bigger. And probably I was making it harder for myself by running too long at the weekend. So rookie
Yeah.
errors, guys. Learn, if you read the book, follow the book.
Yeah,
Don't,
I do remember.
more is not better. Faster is not better, etc. Don't
Yeah.
be egoist. Typical guy thing, I think.
I do remember that. I remember there was one weekend because we were following it at the same time one weekend where we were supposed to do 10 miles and I turned off at the halfway mark and you were like,
I
oh
kind of
well.
looked at you and say, "Where are you going?" It's long run day.
Yeah, it's really hard to turn off. I think probably I was kind of ready for this because I was at a place where I hadn't really survived any marathon training plans for a few years. I mean, never mind the marathon. The marathon training just wiped me out before I even got to the starting line. Um, so yeah, I think I was ready to try something different, and I've always believed that it's like a recipe. When you're cooking, the first time that you try a recipe, you're not supposed to modify the ingredients because otherwise you won't know if the recipe doesn't turn out. Is it because you modified the ingredients, or is it because the recipe's not good?
That's a really
So
good way of putting it.
yeah, so that's how I felt about trying a new plan, and because it really had everything outlined, it had all your days of running outlined. Um, it sort of had, it didn't really have, it had some exercises as well for strength, but I kind of modified that part. I did my own plan that I was used to doing. So
My problem is all my recipes have added bacon. so, so there you go. Not supposed to modify the recipe, but how could it be worse if you put bacon in it?
I don't know, chocolate chip cookies with bacon. I don't think it's so good.
Okay, so so we've talked through a bit of the program. What have we missed out of the actual structure of the program itself? I think just for listeners and people who might want to pick up the book, Humphrey splits his 6-day weekly program into what he calls easy runs, and then things that he calls SOS, something of substance, which is either a speed run or a strength run that you've described, or a long run, which is also something of substance, and then easy runs filling around, which need to be run at the correct pace in order to give you the benefits.
So there is,
What else have we missed out of the program that we need
yeah,
to?
there is actually a whole section on supplemental training, which is like the active, the dynamic warm up, and all that kind of thing. So he does a little bit go into that. He even has stretches in there. Yeah, there's some exercises for strength, like it looks like the bridge exercise, squats, those kinds of things. I didn't really follow that part of it because I already had a strength training routine that I did twice a week. So
not only is he going to give you the runs, he's going to give you how to get ready for each run, what's the best way to warm up in a dynamic fashion, and I guess cool down as well.
Yeah, he always mentions, so there is a more detailed plan. I just find that sometimes it's a little like the really detailed one is a bit hard to read, just because there's a lot of abbreviations because you still have the same size box and then he's trying to fit everything into the box. So you have to go down at the bottom and read all the what it means, because you'll have like DWU1, WU. So you have to go down and be like, oh, what is that again? But
okay, so providing you can
he outlines that as well for you.
decipher all the acronyms, you actually get a fully overall preparation, as well as just the runs themselves and what speed you should be going at for your target time.
Yep. And you even have, he talks about sweating and sweat loss. You have a sweat loss calculator. where but he talks about it in the book. He says, and I've tried this before with a previous coach. So it's, if you're gonna go and do like a hot summer marathon, then you would go and to know how much you need to drink during your marathon, you could go and run. So what you do is you weigh yourself before you leave the house in your running gear that you're wearing, and then you go for your run, you come back, you weigh yourself. And it's
So
gonna.
this is some specifics around planning your rehydration or your hydration preparation strategy.
It's more like planning your hydration during the event to
Okay.
make it. So he does say that it's hard to get to replace everything you're gonna lose, but what you don't want is, you don't want to. So there are like grades of dehydration. So if you're there's mild, moderate, and severe, and obviously you don't want to be, I think severe is losing 10% of more or more of your body weight, but you don't want to be severely dehydrated, because that hinders performance. And mild is sort of okay, moderate also, so it would affect your performance, and that's why he dedicates a small portion of the book to that. And he tells you sort of how you can calculate your sweat loss, because then the idea is that you'll try and drink enough to not be severely dehydrated by the time you get to the finish line.
And what's the consensus on that? That we generally don't drink enough, or?
I can't remember if he said that we generally don't drink enough. I know that like in some years we would read online those articles that people drank too much and went into hyponatremia, which is dangerous, and you could die from it. Basically, it's because they drank too much. I think from what I remember reading, and I can't remember if I read it in this book or somewhere else, but like if they look at elite runners, a lot of them are at least a little bit dehydrated when they cross the finish line. So it's I guess the consensus is that it's kind of normal to be dehydrated, but you don't want to be severely dehydrated.
Okay, cool. But that's quite advanced, I guess. And you and I are sort of talking about this stuff, and we've got a few marathons under our belt. Some old guys have got a few more marathons than some young girls. But what if I'm a beginner? Is this book any good for me? If I'm thinking about doing my first marathon?
So I would say yes, they do. He does have a just finished plan, and the just finished plan you don't do as many of the workouts and those kinds of things. The idea is that you want to finish and you want to enjoy your experience. And so, in that plan, it's mostly the easy runs. And so I think that he took, obviously this is fascinating to somebody that's been running a lot of marathons and are looking maybe to improve. But I think it can be equally as fascinating to somebody that's maybe new to marathoning, and they want to learn more about it. I actually have a friend at work that I recommended this book to, and her she bought it, she read it, and she's followed, she bought the half marathon, the Hanson's half marathon method, which is, it has a lot of the similar sections. It's just that it's the half marathon plan, so the volumes are different and that kind of thing. But she read it, she liked the book, she was like, she liked that it helped her make sense of what she was doing and why she was doing it. And because she was a beginner and dedicating a lot of time to training, and she has a young child still at home, so it kind of, I think it reinforced her motivation. So I think, yes, this can definitely help a beginner. And, people like us that are more experienced and just like to geek out on all kinds of physiology things.
I've noticed our club coach starting to talk about Hanson
Mm-hmm.
programs now and telling all the boys and girls they've got to run more days per week, and
Yeah. And
changing his plan a little bit towards this.
yeah, I think he saw the progress, and so he saw some results, and he thought that maybe it's worth a try. Although he was already, some parts were not a hard sell for him, but yeah, definitely the shorter long run was a bit of a hard sell.
Okay, so let's talk about your personal experience with the plan a little bit. Just before we get to that, I'll just summarize some salient points, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, because you're the expert. So the Hanson program's an 18-week program, basically, and you can do either a beginner or an intermediate or an advanced, and it tells you how to choose that, or first marathon, beginner, advanced. It tells you how to choose that, and then takes you through a program which is 6 days per week and has a shorter long run, less on the long run and more on the overall than other programs. And is geared towards specifically targeting physiological effects, like building your runs to push your VO2 max, doing your easy runs to push your aerobic threshold. This is all explained in nice, easy to understand terms, but jargon words for saying give you a capability to perform at a marathon pace that you've chosen by giving you targets of exercising at certain paces and certain strength targets. So this is the sort of overall summary of the program as far as I can see. Anything, is that basically it? Details, you've got to work your own program out based upon your target marathon time. So you need to work out what you're going to try to do in terms of a target marathon. Easy for you to choose, or easy for me to choose because we have some experience.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, if you're a beginner, how you choose. Maybe you just
So
you
it's a
do some
little
trial
difficult.
runs, and you establish what you think you might go for. If you're underdone, well, that's okay. You'll overachieve, and then you can reset and go again next time.
Yeah, I know that choosing a goal, and there are many tables and equivalency charts throughout the book, and but yeah, I get, if you're brand new or relatively new to marathoning, it can be kind of difficult to
Now,
figure out
I
which.
know you touched on it a little earlier. I know that you had a tough little period where you had some sort of marathon ambitions. It wasn't working for you. You got injured. I know you had a bad plantar at one stage. You were out for about a year with that. You gradually come
Yep.
back, and you seem to have chosen this program as a way to readjust. So I just like to get this sort of application of the book. You know, you read the book, you've applied it, and you're one of these good students. You're not the guy. You're not like me, the guy who adds bacon to every recipe. You're the rule follower. If I was talking to your partner, he would tell me she always follows every rules. If the little red man's on the crossing, she never crosses. She makes everybody wait. So you follow the program, probably followed the program in a very detailed fashion. So I'd like you to coming into that, I'd like you to just talk me through your personal experience with it and how it worked, what didn't work, what benefits you got, etc.
So so I think when I was looking at, when I read this book and I was looking at the plan, I was at this place, like I said, where I hadn't run, I hadn't even survived training, never mind run a personal best in like at least 5 years, I think, at that point. And even the personal best I had run 5 years earlier, or 4 years maybe at this point, it was an accidental PB, I would say, because my training leading up had kind of not gone very well. It was one of these situations where I would have like one really great week of training, 3 kind of miserable weeks of training where sometimes I just wouldn't even be able to finish some of the trainings or not run them at pace or those kinds of things. So when I came across this book, I think I was already in the mindset of like I wanted something new, and I wanted to, like, I think the outcome was less of a priority. What I had kind of set as my goal was that I wanted to survive marathon training. And it was in the spring, so I was training over the winter in Canada, which is very snowy and everything. In the end, I decided not to run a marathon. I decided to run around the Bay 30K because again, my experience with the marathon, all the months of recovery after, I thought that maybe I'd be giving myself more of a chance by running a 30K. And the race was actually less of the goal. The goal was to survive marathon training. So I kind of, when I was reading through it, I liked how things seemed very progressive. So I liked how the marathon pace long run was not, 10K, the week after it's 12K, the week after it's 14K, the week after it's 16K, which is kind of what with the team we had done in the past.
We're going to crank it up until it breaks you.
Exactly. And that had obviously not been working for me. So I kind of liked that there was time for me to maybe master one level before moving to the next. So I kind of liked that it was over the entire 17 weeks, because I'm not counting the first week. And then the other workouts, I thought, 5K workouts, those I was pretty much okay with. And then the not so long runs, I was just ready to give it a try. I guess that's why it didn't play too much with my head, was that I wanted to survive the training and I wasn't so focused on the outcome at the race. So yeah, and it made sense to me, like with the easy runs. And not only that, but the easy runs are pretty much what I enjoy the most about running. Like, I do enjoy running fast, but I don't enjoy running fast every day. I like the chatty easy runs with the team where we just talk about the latest books we've been reading. Yeah. I enjoy those a lot. So
or I talk about sports and you ignore me.
Yeah, like when you talk about soccer. That's when I zone out and I think about what book I'm going to read next. So yeah, I think I was part of reading the book was that it convinced me that I'm able to follow this plan. And then as I was going, I found that I could follow it. And, it reminded me of certain things, like run your easy runs easy enough. So, if some days I felt like the run was not feeling easy when I was with, let's say, the front of the pack, then I would move to the back of the pack. And it was just, the book kind of reminded me of those basic principles that, everybody's told at some point during their
and it reinforces you, I think, that it's okay to do that. In fact, it's smart to do that.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, I'm not performing. No. You're in this for the long haul. It's smart to do that. You get your rewards later.
Yeah. And even I had kind of noticed that sometimes after the long runs, I was really clobbered. And I think that because this plan only had a long run every second week, I think that also felt very manageable at that time. And it felt like that was probably something I was looking for. And I'm like, okay, well, because 18 weeks can be a really long time if your training's all over the place like mine was. So by having a long run every second week, it's sort of like I would focus on that week with all of the trainings, and then the week after was like, well, I only have to focus on 2 trainings. So it was kind of mentally, like, I felt confident that I could do it. And I think confidence is probably a key in performing or surviving any marathon plan. So that was kind of my experience with it. And it was also, it was also successful because I mean, yes, I only ran a 30K race, but it was, a pace that I had done on the treadmill for the Thursday runs, because this was January, February in Canada when the footing was bad, and I had done everything on the treadmill, and around the bay is not really a flat course. And despite that, on the treadmill I was running 424 to 426 per K. And then when I went to the race, and the race was hilly, my average pace was 426 per K. So once I ran the race, I was almost convinced that this plan works, because I had managed to transfer exactly what I was doing on the treadmill, which is flat and perfect conditions, into a race where there was a hilly last 10K with like a headwind, and I still ran the pace. So I was pretty happy with that.
So what you're saying really is, if there's somebody out there who's struggling with their program, or are finding that they're just getting smashed by their program, this is a good way of recalibrating.
Yeah, that's
follow
how
the
I
plan,
felt.
stick to the plan. It'll bring you through.
Yep.
Or if you're looking to get in first time for a marathon, you're a little bit scared. Maybe it's a way. There is commitment, because the 6-day running a week is not easy to manage if you're working, you've got children, whatever. But it will bring you through, I think.
Yep, it's really worked for me, and I know we're all different, but I think sometimes they say that it's a definition of insanity to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. I don't remember who told me that. But that totally makes sense. And in this case, I think that I was doing the same thing over and over, and I was getting worse results every time. So I was ready to try something new. And
so you took this program. You took this program into the Toronto Scotiabank Marathon that we did last October.
Yep, I took it there. That was my second time following the plan. And that got me my 3:04:29, which was a 5-minute personal best, which in a marathon is huge. So I think that I think like there's value in changing things up every so often, but I think that my whatever I have to get out of this particular program is maybe not done, because I followed it twice already and it's gotten me results. I think once I stop getting improvements, then maybe it'll be time to change something. But for now,
well, you've certainly got me paying attention to the program, having seen the fantastic sort of comeback that you've done over the last couple of years. Trouble is, I should probably add bacon to the recipe.
Or maybe take the bacon away, because you've been adding the bacon.
chocolate chip cookies with bacon.
No, not a good mix.
So great stuff. One of the things I'd like to do towards the end, we don't want to bore everybody to tears with our podcast. We could talk about this kind of stuff all night. But it's basically just to give some overall views on the book itself. For instance, I found the book very nicely sort of prepared and presented. I'm an older guy, so I like, big friendly words, easy to read on the page, not squeezed together, which it is. I think it's from Villa Press, and I've got to say I'm pretty impressed with some of the things I've seen coming out of Villa Press recently. So I think it's a nicely presented book in terms of how, the tables are nice. The typeface is good. It's just a nice book to pick up and flip through, and easy to read, well laid out.
Yep, I agree with that. Like it's with the 3 parts, and and the tables and even the exercises, you have little drawings. I feel like it's well presented, and it's it's easy to. I think the they transfer the information well.
What are the
So
best things about the book, as far as apart from the fact that it gives you a program that gives you a 5-minute PR?
well, that's pretty much the best thing. But other than that, I really liked the carb calculator, like the I don't remember what it's actually called, but the calculator where you calculate how many grams of carbs you're going to need to ingest during your marathon. That was kind of after having actually implemented it in Toronto. Like I feel like that's such a game changer. So I'm glad that they put that in there, because it makes it, they cover really everything about training. They're covering they're covering all the components of the workouts and the structure of the plan, but they're also telling you about the other details that could be important, like the hydration and the fueling strategy for your race. So I enjoyed that.
Are there any, I agree with that. One of the things I'm learning is the value of the easy runs. The high value of them, rather than just saying, well, they're ego runs because you want to add up all the kilometers at the end of the week and say, oh, look what I did. No, there's real benefit to that, and get out and do it, and get those benefits. So that's something that I learned by reading the book. That was pretty cool. Nutrition strategies in terms of just taking in enough calories. I think this is one of my big failings. I often fade at the end of marathons. I managed to fade at Toronto, where you didn't, for example. And
I think 5 gels.
And I think there's good advice in there of how to get around that, recognize that, and work around that. So that's great. What about things that are not so good in the book? Is there anything that's kind of meh?
Well,
ordinary?
I don't know. For me, it pretty much kept me interested throughout the whole book. So I'm not sure, like, because I do have a nursing background, so I enjoy like all the physiology and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if somebody that doesn't have a medical background, like how they would, because my coworker also has a medical background. She loved the book, so we kind of and
I'm a pharmacist by background,
background.
so I'm a pharmacist by background, so I've got a certain amount of physiology background knowledge.
Yeah, so I want to say that the book really explains everything beautifully and simply, and everything flows well. The information flows well. I just don't know, like, people that don't, I don't know if somebody that maybe doesn't care so much about physiology, how much they would stay captivated with all the fancy terms like VO2 max. And
I think if you've got an interest but you don't really understand it, I think providing you've got an interest and you've got enough interest to read a few pages, I think it explains it quite nicely. Not in too much detail, like what is this thing, aerobic threshold, and why do you need it, and how does it help you run, and how does the training program help you to get more of that, and what will that give you on marathon day? It puts that into a nice context, I think. But you need a little bit of interest, obviously.
I think you're
one would hope you
right.
are a bit interested. I mean, everybody talks about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe, if people are looking to read books about running, it's maybe for that reason as well, because they're kind of interested to figure out, like, well, how do you improve performance, and why do these things improve performance? So then this book breaks it down really nicely, and I think, you know.
I tell you one thing that I found to be maybe not so great about the book, was more the periphery subjects. For example, you know, how to choose some shoes and what to wear in terms of shoes. Okay, it gives you some basic advice, a couple of paragraphs. This is towards the end, around
Oh yes.
chapter 10 on gear.
Oh
It'll tell you,
yeah,
you know,
that's
sort of how to
true.
choose a pair of shoes. See, you've even forgotten about it
I've forgotten
because
about it. Yeah.
it's so trivial. So it does tell you, it's very comprehensive. You know, it talks about what sort of gear to choose and why, but it's very superficial, I think.
Yeah, because shoes can be such a huge topic.
I mean, we've just done
Right.
the podcast on Kixology, where we spent a whole podcast just talking about shoes.
That's true. Yeah.
And then you read the marathon training program, and he talks about shoes. You go, nah, not really. Pass.
Yeah, I think maybe I forgot about that section because
Yeah.
I'm already a bit of a shoe nerd. So I was like, I read it, but I think that, you know, it was kind of like, okay, well, that's okay. I mean, I'm not going to restrict myself to a pair of like neutral or a
But
pair of.
I guess if you're a beginner, there's some stuff there for you there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you don't know what you should be eating on race morning, he tells you
Yeah.
why you should do certain things.
He also tells you that you need to try it beforehand. So, you know.
Yeah. So I think there were a couple of peripheral subjects that are a little bit superficial. Would have been a thick book if you tried to deal with those in a
Yeah, I
comprehensive
guess
manner.
it's good in that he touched on them so people are aware that those could be things that you need to think about. And but yeah, I guess it probably didn't do it those things justice to just have like little section. But
So,
yeah.
bottom line, would you recommend the book to somebody? Who, why,
I would.
and what's your rating?
Okay, so yes, I would definitely recommend this book. I enjoyed it. I think it's well written. Who would I recommend it to? I think anybody that's interested in knowing why they do what they do, like why they do certain workouts, and also anybody that's looking to try something new or to improve their performance. Because even if you don't follow the plan to a T, there's a lot of information in the book that you can you know, implement just on its own. Like for instance, the race fueling strategy. So I think yeah, I think you could still get something out of this book. And who would I recommend it to? I guess I summed that up. You need to be somewhat interested if you're going to read a whole entire book about training. You need to be interested in training. The rating that I would give it, is this on 5, like a 5-star kind of thing?
Yeah, if you like. You can give
So
it out of 10 if you can't work it out, or
yeah,
whatever
it's
you
so
like.
tough.
I
Like,
mean,
you know, I don't want to just
five
give
stars.
all the books like 5 stars.
We're book nerds, so we give all books 5 stars. So, so out of all these 5-star books that we're reading,
And obviously, I realize that I'm a little bit biased because I'm totally sold since I ran a 304 marathon.
yeah, but it's your
Because of
opinion,
this.
so you're gonna give it 5 on 5. Okay.
I will give it, you know what? Okay, let's say I'm going to give it 4.5. The only part of the book that I felt was lacking a little bit was maybe the strength training. But again, I realized that it's you know, you can't write everything on everything because the book would be 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
So you know, let's say 4.5. I think 4.5. That's like a 9 out of 10, which would be 90%. And you know, I think 90% is like almost perfect.
That's a high distinction. Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. My personal experience would be, we said, oh, let's do a review on this book, because I knew that you'd read the book, and I knew that you'd read the book, and you knew the book in a lot of detail. So I said to you, loan me a book, and I'll browse through it, and we can talk about it. And I thought, yeah, I don't get time to read all this stuff. I'll just flip through it, look at the contents, and then I'll ask Liz to explain it all. And I picked up the book and ended up reading the book from cover to cover in about 2 or 3 days. And for me, that speaks volumes for the book itself. I didn't actually intend to read the whole book, but I read it anyway. And I think even if you're not looking to follow the program in its entirety, you can get something out of the book. We can say, oh, yeah, they're talking about this aspect. Oh, in my training or my experience or something that I've come across, maybe I need an adjustment there. And that's what I found that I was doing, even without saying I'm going to do the training program or I'm going to ignore the training program, or just by reading the book, I was able to get some knowledge that was a thought about how I could adjust what I do, how I prepare. And then I started a little bit to think, oh, I haven't planned to do a marathon in the spring. Oh, I wish I was doing one so I could do this program and then see if it would work. So I think the fact that I feel that way about the book, I had to give it a high rating. So, I would give it, based on all the other book ratings I've been giving, I would give this one 5. I think it's well presented, it's well given, it's well documented. You can agree or disagree with some of the programs. I know they're a bit controversial, but we're not here to judge that. We're here to tell you what's in it, tell you how we feel about it. So I think I would give it 5.
That's fair. That's fair.
4.5 if you like, in order to leave space for the people. I don't know. They're going to give. Somebody's going to send us a book to review, and it's going to have dollar bills all stashed into between the pages. We'll give them 5. That was a joke, by the way. These are unbiased reviews.
No, we actually had to buy these books ourselves.
Okay, so anything else to add on the review?
No, I think that's pretty much it for me.
It was pretty good. Thank you for your excellent feedback in terms of not only information in the book, but experience with using what's in the book. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. I think the pudding sometimes has bacon in it, as I say. And
I think sometimes you need to remove the bacon so you can.
So that's the Hanson Marathon Method, provided to us by Luke Humphrey. Luke is a fantastic guy. He has a lot of stuff out on the web. I know we both listened to some of his things on YouTube and podcasts in order to get some background around this review. And I would encourage anybody to go and listen to that stuff too.
Yeah, and he does say, the book actually does say Luke Humphrey with Keith and Kevin Hanson. So it sounds like
those are the originators of the program. Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time, Liz. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you.
And we hope all of you will join us again soon for the next running book review.